Why I make the case that the role of cities is a missing piece in the global narrative on climate change mitigation and adaptation. And I'm using the word mitigation and adaptation because there is a risk reduction piece and there is an emission reduction piece. Emission reduction is a 20-year commitment. Risk reduction is yesterday, today, tomorrow. Floods, bad air quality, extreme heat, these are cyclic, they are seasonal, sometimes it happens twice in the same year. Right? So why do I make this case? Because 50% of the global world's population live in cities, and that is likely to go up by to 65% of global population. There are 33 mega cities in 2018, and there will likely be 41 mega cities by 2050. Right? Cities contribute to 70% of global emissions because of the concentration of people who are moving to cities. And remember, moving necessarily is not just migration related only. I could be living in my same place, just the city has expanded the boundary, therefore I am now considered urban. That's happened in Bangalore, right? All the rural areas, the rural villages have been consumed into the greater BBMP area, right? So you necessarily don't have to move from another place to be considered living in a city now, right? And 90% of this growth is likely to happen in Asia and Africa, because this is where the biggest cities are likely to come from. And mind you, 90% of the urban population will be exposed to bad air quality as a result of unregulated growth. And I'll lay out the case that I'm making. And one of the key pieces is what we call as NDCs. NDCs are nationally determined commitments that governments, national governments have made at the Conference of Parties, which is called the COP. There's a COP coming up in Azerbaijan in the next 6 to 8 weeks, where Government of India, Government of United Kingdom, the Netherlands, all of them have made their commitments of what national governments will achieve, but there is no role for cities in that role, in that NDCs. At least I'm talking with the specific case in India, right? What are the potential impacts that we're seeing as a result of climate change? We're seeing bad air quality, air pollution, water scarcity, and Bangalore's had a double whammy. We had extreme heat and we had no water, right? And we're seeing this more and more because these are two separate instances happening in tandem, right? And I'm not going to go through these because these are some of the impacts that we're seeing across many cities in India, right? But why do I believe where we are? Because in the Paris COP, when the United Nations Council or UNFCCC made a commitment that we will try and keep the temperature increase to under 1.5. We are already at 1.3 right now. If we don't fix our cities, we are looking at 2 to 3 degree rise. But 2 to 3 degrees, what does it mean? It's an abstract number. I'll show you what it means, right? Now, India and its cities, right? India is stated to be 30 or 32% urban in a population of 1.4 billion, roughly 400 million people. But we are likely to be 50% urban very soon. I think we already are 50% urban because the census data will tell us that. Currently, there are only 3 tier 1 or 4 tier 1 cities, but there are the next tier 1s already joining that race. We have the Bangalores, the Chennais, the Ahmedabad, the Punes, all of them growing rapidly. But what's also interesting is the tier 1 cities are not growing as fast as the tier 2 and the tier 3 cities, because that's where growth is happening. It's not in the Mumbais or the Bangalores, it's the Mysores, it's the Hassans, it's the Nagpurs, the Sanglis, the Durgapurs of West Bengal, right? And what we're also seeing, and a classic case is, if we take my hometown, the city of Bangalore, we were 3.5 million people in 1985. We are 14 million now. And that's kind of symbolic of the kind of growth we see. And obviously everything's out of whack. our waste is not collected, there's traffic on the street. We simply are not able to manage the growth. Growth is required, but we have to be able to manage it in a manner that we can learn from some of the examples. And I'll frame the challenge as a triple challenge. And the reason I'm saying that is finance, authority, and problems. What do I mean by that? Typically in India, you have national governments that have the finance and the money in terms of missions. You have the Smart Cities mission, you have the Atal mission, the Solar mission, the National Health mission. So they have the mission and the guidelines, right? States have the regulatory authority to pass laws. Cities have the problems. So you have a three-way disconnect between money, authority, and where the problems are. And in a federal structure like India, money cannot flow to the city directly. It has to go through the state. And if we have a different political party at different levels of government, we have a classic logjam. Money will not flow. And one of the things that we're seeing is that, and so in this three-way disconnect, the triple challenge is that we're growing very quickly in terms of urbanization. We have structural issues of urban governance. And what I mean by that is cities are not empowered to make decisions on their own. Cities are only service delivery agencies. They deliver services. They collect your waste, they provide you footpaths, they provide street lighting, they collect your property taxes, but all policy decisions are made by the state, including your urban planning, your master planning, your route rationalization of buses. All of these are done either by a state agency or parastatal agency. They are not constitutional bodies where you have a say in who you elect in order for a service to be delivered. Now take that. So that's what I mean by authority versus accountability, right? And lack of devolution of power, because at the end of the day, if somebody does not have the ability to make a decision, how can you hold them accountable for it? And in the political economy that we live in, there is a urgency to reduce risks, but not an urgency to make a 20-year commitment or a 15-year commitment. And that's what I mean by risk reduction versus emission reduction. Some examples of Chennai floods, very 10-second story. Chennai flood was not caused by flooding. It was actually caused by a waste management problem, because Chennai was dumping its waste in the lakes. So when it rained, there was no ability to hold the water long enough for the water to drain. So there was simply a question of solving a waste problem to solve a urban flooding problem. So what I'm trying to say is these challenges are all connected. It's not a single challenge. What is the way forward? We have to fix our governance. There is no way, and this is a call to our political leadership here in this state. Bangalore needs the Mass Transit Authority to really manage the different, there are 7 different agencies controlling mobility in the city. We need them to come together, whether it is the Land Transport Authority or whether it is the Transport for London, whatever model, we need a model in this country. Secondly, the climate action plans have to be made mandatory in terms of its linkage to the master plan, because master plan currently is only a change in land use. It becomes agricultural to residential to commercial to mixed use. But there is no understanding of what is the impact of those land uses. Energy consumption goes up, waste gets generated, traffic congestion is as a result of it. And most importantly, I think local businesses and civil society organizations have to own the plan and own the commitment. It is not the government's plan. It is your plan, because we are the people of the city. And the key for that ownership is having a really robust communication strategy. How do you communicate why certain decisions are made in a manner that it's consistent with a plan to achieve a particular target? Now I'll talk about why these examples are important, and I've kind of listed some case studies which are contextual to our cities in India. I think there is a big lesson to be learned, because climate action plans are being formulated in several cities in India now. It's nothing new. but they are being formulated in isolation. They are not linked to the master planning process. Number one. Secondly, I think there is enough to learn for cities in India to really look at the ultra low emission zone that London has done, or the cloudburst management plan that Copenhagen has done, in terms, because these cities have also faced similar issues, but the way they have dealt with those issues is fundamentally different than the way we're dealing with it, right? And Rotterdam, Durban, Singapore, Leaf Space Index is a very interesting example. Singapore has a policy for every square foot of building that you build, you have to build 1.5 square feet of leaf space in terms of green walls inside your unit. It's not on your ground coverage. That fundamentally changes how you envision a building, how you look at, because increasing green cover has an impact on reducing noise pollution, air pollution, and it gives you a better sense of living. I'll end this by saying, I think our society will be judged by what we, it's not just by limited by what we create, but actually what we try and retain and not destroy. Thank you so much.